Mommy, I miss Papa. Those words came out in a small, trembling voice. I froze. My hand that was folding his clothes stopped midway, and for a moment, I couldn't even breathe. Eli sat on the bed, clutching his little toy car tightly, his big eyes shimmering with tears that refused to fall. His lips trembled as he looked at me, innocent and longing. "Why can't I see him, Mama?" he whispered, voice breaking. "Did I do something wrong?" My chest tightened painfully. I turned away quickly, pretending to reach for something on the shelf, just so he wouldn't see my tears. "No, baby," I managed to say softly. "You didn't do anything wrong." "Then why doesn't he come see me?" he asked again, his voice full of that raw, aching confusion only a child could hold. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. "Sometimes," I whispered, "grown-ups make mistakes. Big ones. And it takes time for them to fix it." He blinked at me, still not understanding. "But I miss him," he murmured, pressing his toy car against his chest. I smiled faintly, though my throat burned. "I know," I said, running my fingers gently through his soft hair. "I know you do." But deep inside me, his words ripped open wounds I had tried so hard to bury. 3 years ago, I left Daniel. Or maybe, he left me first, long before I walked out that door. He had everything then: money, power, influence, and the arrogance that came with it. He was a CEO who thought the world bent for him. And I was just the fool who believed love could change him. But when love turns into pain, even fools learn to walk away. Since then, life hasn't been easy. I worked odd jobs, stayed up countless nights trying to build a small business of my own. I told myself I didn't care about Daniel anymore, that he got what he deserved when his empire fell. But every time Eli asked about him, a part of me cracked again. That night, after putting Eli to bed, I sat by the window and looked out into the dark. The rain fell quietly against the glass. It was strange how life could shift so cruelly. Daniel had once been untouchable. Now, he was just a rumor people whispered about, the fallen CEO. Some said his company went bankrupt after an insider leak ruined his investors' trust. Others said karma finally caught up with him. Whatever the truth, he was gone from the world that once adored him. And yet, when I closed my eyes, I still saw his face. Those cold eyes that once looked at me like I was nothing. And those rare, fleeting moments when they softened, like maybe deep down, he had loved me after all. I sighed. "Stop thinking about him, Noah," I muttered to myself. "He's not your world anymore." But no matter how many times I told myself that, Eli's voice echoed in my head. "I miss Papa." The next morning, I found Eli sitting quietly at the table, his drawing book open. He was scribbling something with his crayon, tongue sticking out in concentration. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" I asked gently. He smiled up at me, eyes bright. "It's us," he said proudly. "You, me, and Papa." My heart stilled. There on the paper were 3 figures, a tall man with messy hair, a smaller figure holding his hand, and a person with long hair standing beside them, all smiling under a bright yellow sun. I bit my lip, my chest twisting painfully. "Do you think Papa still remembers me?" he asked suddenly. I froze. How was I supposed to answer that? Before I could speak, he added softly, "I think he does. Because I remember him every day." Tears filled my eyes, but I blinked them away quickly. "Eat your breakfast," I whispered. "It'll get cold." He nodded, but I saw the tiny smile fade from his lips. That night, after he fell asleep, I sat again by the window. But this time, something felt different. A weight pressed down on my chest, guilt, longing, maybe both. I picked up my phone. My fingers hovered over the search bar before I even realized what I was doing. Daniel Harris. Dozens of results popped up. Old headlines about his company's collapse, angry articles about his arrogance, gossip blogs mocking his downfall. Then one photo caught my eye. He looked older, weaker, dressed in plain clothes, standing outside a small grocery store carrying boxes. My breath hitched. He was working. That can't be him. I whispered. But I knew. It was. A man who once ruled the boardroom was now stacking shelves. Something inside me twisted. And before I could stop myself, I whispered to the empty room. Maybe he's paid enough for what he did. But just as I turned off my phone, a small voice came from behind me. "Mommy." I turned. Eli stood there, rubbing his eyes, his hair messy from sleep. "Why are you crying?" he asked, voice soft. I smiled weakly, wiping my cheeks. "I'm not, baby. Go back to bed." He frowned. "You're lying." I sighed, pulling him close. "It's nothing," I murmured. Go to sleep. He looked up at me with that same hopeful glint in his eyes. Can we go find Papa? My breath caught again. Please, Mommy, he whispered. I just want to see him once. And that was how it began. The moment that would pull me back into a past I thought I had buried forever. I didn't know it yet, but fate was already moving. And soon our paths would cross again. This time, everything would be different. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding heart and a decision I hadn't meant to make. Eli's words from the night before echoed in my mind like a whisper I couldn't escape. Can we go find Papa? I told myself it was impossible. That it was too late, too painful, too risky to dig up the past. But when I looked at my son's face, that same soft gaze, that same stubborn determination that reminded me of him, I realized there was no choice left. I had to find Daniel. Not for me. For Eli. The small town where we lived was a few hours from the city Daniel once ruled. When I left, I swore I'd never set foot there again. But that morning, as the bus rolled down the familiar road lined with wilted trees and broken streetlights, my heart clenched painfully. Eli sat beside me, his little hand clutching mine, his eyes bright with hope. Do you think Papa will be happy to see us? He asked softly. I forced a smile. I don't know, sweetheart. But we'll see. He nodded eagerly, unaware of the storm inside me. Because deep down, I wasn't sure if Daniel would even want to see me again, or if he'd changed at all. When we finally arrived, the city felt different. Not as bright, not as cruel. Just quieter. The noise of the past had faded, leaving behind a ghost of what used to be. I asked around quietly, pretending to be someone looking for a relative. It didn't take long before I heard his name. Daniel Harris? The old shopkeeper said, raising a brow. Yeah, he works over at Mrs. Cooper's store down the street. Hard to believe that man used to be some big-shot CEO. My heart skipped. He was still here. Thank you, I whispered, my palms cold. As we walked toward the shop, Eli hummed softly, skipping a little as he held my hand. But my steps slowed. My throat tightened with every breath. And then, I saw him. He was bent over, stacking boxes of fruits by the window. His once perfect hair was unkempt, his clothes simple and worn. There were lines on his face that hadn't been there before, exhaustion, regret, maybe both. My breath caught. That was Daniel, the man who once had everything, the man who broke me. For a long moment, I couldn't move. My heart screamed to turn around, to walk away, to protect myself from everything I'd already survived. But then Eli let go of my hand. Before I could stop him, he ran forward. Papa! The world seemed to stop. Daniel froze mid-motion, his body stiff. Slowly, he turned, and when his eyes met Eli's, his face went pale. I could see it, the confusion, the disbelief, and then the realization. His lips parted, but no sound came out. He just stared at the little boy in front of him, the one who shared his eyes, his hair, his smile. Eli grinned wide, holding out a small piece of paper. Papa, look. I drew us. Daniel's hands trembled as he reached for it. He stared down at the childish drawing, a man, a boy, and another figure standing beside them under a bright sun. When his eyes lifted to me, I felt the air leave my lungs. Noah, he whispered. I looked away, blinking hard. Hello, Daniel. The silence between us was heavy. People in the shop whispered quietly, stealing glances. Some looked disgusted, others pitied him. Daniel's hands clenched at his sides. You came back. I didn't come back, I said quietly. He wanted to see you. His eyes darted toward Eli again, full of guilt, longing, and something that looked like pain. He tried to speak, but his voice broke. I didn't know you'd ever. Don't, I said sharply, my voice colder than I intended. Don't say you didn't know. You made your choices, Daniel. He flinched, eyes darkening. I know, he whispered. And I regret every one of them. Eli looked between us, confused. Papa, Mama, are you fighting? The words stung. I forced a smile and crouched beside him. No, sweetheart. We're just talking. Daniel swallowed hard, looking away. Noah, please. Let me. But I stood, cutting him off. We're leaving now. As I turned to walk out, a voice called from behind the counter. Hey, Daniel. Don't forget, you still owe me for the last delivery. Don't think your sad face will get you out of that again. Laughter followed, harsh mocking. I froze. Eli's eyes widened, watching as one of the men tossed an apple at Daniel. It hit the floor beside him, rolling away. Pathetic, the man muttered. Daniel just stood there, silent. His shoulders trembled, but he didn't say a word. Something in me cracked. Without thinking, I stepped forward and said coldly, "If you're done humiliating someone who's trying to live, maybe you should look at yourselves first." The man blinked, startled. And for a moment, the store went completely silent. Then I turned, grabbed Eli's hand, and walked out. Outside, the sun burned hot against the pavement, but I felt cold. Eli tugged my sleeve, his voice small. "Mama, why were they mean to Papa?" I couldn't answer. Not yet. When I glanced back through the shop window, Daniel was still standing there, staring at us. And even though I tried to tell myself it didn't matter anymore, my heart whispered the truth I didn't want to admit. I still cared. That night, after tucking Eli into bed at the small and we were staying in, I sat alone by the window again. Through the curtain, I could see the faint glow of the shop down the street. Daniel was still there, sweeping quietly under the dim lights. He looked so small. Not the man I once knew, but a shadow of him. And yet, seeing him like that didn't bring the satisfaction I thought it would. It only made my chest ache. Maybe Eli was right. Maybe he deserved a second chance, not as the man he used to be, but as the one who was learning what it meant to fall and rise again. But before I could think further, there was a knock on my door. I froze. When I opened it, Daniel stood there, wet from the drizzle, his eyes red, his voice trembling. "No, please. Let me explain." Rain poured softly that night, like the sky was trying to wash away the years between us. Daniel stood by my door, drenched, trembling, his eyes pleading. "Noah, please. Let me explain." For a moment, I didn't move. Part of me wanted to slam the door shut. Another part wanted to reach out, pull him inside, and forget everything that had happened. But I stayed frozen, halfway between anger and forgiveness. "Why now?" I whispered. "Why after all these years?" He swallowed hard. "Because I couldn't find you. I tried, Noah. I swear I did. But when the company went down, when everything fell apart, I lost everything. The money, the power, the people who pretended to care. I had no one left." He looked at me, eyes glistening. I thought I deserved it all. Every loss. Every humiliation. But I never stopped thinking about you. Or him. He hesitated, voice breaking. "Our son." My chest tightened. Hearing him say that word again, "our," made my heart twist painfully. "You destroyed me, Daniel," I said quietly. "You let them destroy me. You made sure I couldn't stand again. And now you want to explain." "I know," he whispered. "And I'm not asking for forgiveness. I need to see him. To see Eli." I hesitated. My instinct said no. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Humility. Regret. Sincerity. Without a word, I stepped aside. "Come in." Daniel sat on the couch, dripping onto the rug. I handed him a towel, watching as his shaking hands clutched it like a lifeline. "I don't even know where to start," he murmured. "Start with the truth," I said softly. "Start with why you did what you did." He looked down, his voice barely above a whisper. I was angry, confused. The night we were together, it wasn't supposed to happen. I was scared of what I felt for you, scared of how real it was. And when they told me you'd stolen from me, I believed it because I didn't want to believe I loved you. The words hit deep. He raised his eyes, desperate. And when I found out it was a lie, that someone else had set you up, it was too late. You were already gone. I tried to appeal your case, but the people I once called friends turned their backs on me. And then the company fell apart. He laughed bitterly. I looked at him for a long time. He wasn't lying. I could see it, the pain carved into his face, the truth in his eyes. Before I could say anything, a small voice came from behind me. "Papa." We both turned. Eli stood there, rubbing his sleepy eyes, clutching his stuffed bear. "Papa, you're here," he said with a sleepy smile. "Mama said you were working far away." Daniel froze. Then he slowly knelt, opening his arms. "Come here, Eli." Eli ran to him without hesitation. When Daniel hugged him, he broke, tears spilling down his face, his shoulders shaking. "I'm so sorry," he whispered into Eli's hair. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there." I looked away, blinking hard. The sight was too much, too raw, too real. The next morning, I found Daniel still sitting by the window, watching Eli sleep on the couch beside him. He looked different, softer. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for letting me stay the night." "You needed it," I said simply. "I don't deserve it," he murmured. "Maybe not," I admitted. "But Eli deserves to know his father." He nodded, eyes glistening. "I'll leave if you want me to. I needed to see him once. I paused, then sighed. Stay. For now. His head snapped up, hope flickering. Just for Eli, I added quickly. But even I knew deep down, it wasn't just for Eli. Days turned into weeks. Daniel helped around the house quietly, never asking for anything. He cooked, sometimes fixed things, walked Eli to school. He was still awkward, still guilty, but he tried, and that effort meant more than words. And Eli? He was overjoyed. Every evening, he'd tug at my sleeve and whisper plans in my ear. Mama, can I cook dinner for Papa? Mama, can we go to the park together? Mama, can you not come out yet? I want to surprise Papa. Sometimes he'd even pretend to fall just so Daniel and I would rush over at the same time. And he'd laugh, locking us in eye contact before running off, giggling. The little matchmaker. One night, I came home to find candles on the table and food on the stove. Daniel was standing there, looking confused, while Eli hid behind the curtain, whispering, Say something romantic, Papa. I bit back a laugh, shaking my head. Eli planned this, didn't he? Daniel smiled faintly. He said you like candlelight dinners. I stared at the flickering lights, my chest tightening. He remembers everything. Daniel's gaze softened. He gets that from you. The silence that followed was heavy, but not in a bad way. It was full of everything we never said, everything we still felt. That night, after Eli fell asleep, Daniel found me sitting outside under the stars. I don't know how to say this, he began softly, but I want to start again. Not where we left off, but from who we are now. I looked at him, my heart racing. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a simple silver ring, worn and slightly bent. I bought this a long time ago, he said quietly. I was going to give it to you the day after the party. But then everything fell apart. He took a shaky breath. Noah, will you marry me? The world went still. For a moment, I saw everything flash before my eyes. The betrayal, the pain, the years apart, the loneliness. And then the love that somehow survived all of it. I wanted to say no. But when I saw Eli peeking from the doorway, his little hands clasped together, eyes full of hope, my resolve melted. Tears burned my eyes as I whispered, yes. The next morning, Eli burst into our room, cheering, Mama said yes. Papa, Mama said yes. Daniel laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years, pulling me close as Eli jumped on the bed between us. And for the first time in a long, long while, I felt at peace. Months later, Daniel's life began to rebuild. With my help and his humility, he started a small business. It grew slowly but surely. People who once mocked him now respected him again, not for his money, but for his change. We didn't have everything, but we had love, and that was more than enough. Sometimes I'd catch Daniel watching Eli draw again, the same three figures under a bright sun. Only now the drawing had something new. A little house behind them, with a heart on the roof. Home.